Eric, I think I've tried to have you on this podcast. Well, I mean, you were part of the original short list of maybe 8-10 names that I wanted to talk to. And we've always been told no. And I'm wondering why.
No. Hell no.
Why and why now? Trying to have conversations with people that we clearly don't agree on an awful lot. But we have some principles in place that allow us to have decent conversations. Why the change now?
Well, two things, and I appreciate you guys having me over. And it's absolutely true that you have been trying and I have been avoiding. And no, let's just do this. This is my chance to explain it to you. So there are two answers. Your question, rather, has a two-part answer.
Okay.
The first part is why now? Because we're trifling with the dissolution of our national culture. And our national culture is what animates the country. If we lose the culture, the documents will not save us, okay? Let's be very clear about that. So I have a very strongly strategic perspective, which is that you save things up for an emergency. Well, we're there now. Next point. The real reason that I don't casually hop on over to talk has to do with the strategy that's being employed to make sure that we cannot come together. And let me explain the strategy. Right now, conservative and center-right affiliated media are the only ones who will reach out to talk to their critics. So when Fox asks me on, I always make the same condition, which is that I get to call Fox a propaganda network. And they say, sure.
I love it.
You want to call us a conservative right-wing propaganda network, which is in large measure how I've seen them over the years, although I do think that they may be changing a bit. Then their point is they're not scared of that. The real problem has to do with the center-left media, which still controls, in some sense, the official version of events for the country and the affiliated institutions, universities, the party, what have you. And their game is very different. So they used to talk to me all the time. I would be invited.
Well, one of the debates that comes up on our thing with Isaac, trying to red pill Isaac, is like he's a total institutionalist. He believes that all the left-wing institutions are just mainstream and that all the right-wing institutions are just propaganda. But Eric Weinstein is confirming our belief that the media is completely biased towards the left. Sometimes I wonder if it was as bad when I was, like a regular Young Turks watcher, totally in the progressive bubble. If I felt that same way, I think I might have not even been able to see the media bias.
Well, it is hard. It always is hard to tell. But I mean, obviously it seems like for the last 10, 20 years, there was a left-wing bias to some degree, but I don't think growing up it was like it is now. I don't think that I'm just seeing it for the first time. I think things are actually different. The media did seem to try to make some attempt towards objectivity in the past. There was always a lot of left-wing leaning, but it did seem different. It did seem very, very different than it does now, or there's no attempt whatsoever now.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a political calculus or if it's just naivete about the situation. Like if they're morally blinded and they can't see that, or if they sense that, if we snuff out conservative voices, this is going to be politically good for us.
I mean, I think it's two things. I think one of it's purely cynical, because if you remember, before Trump, what were we hearing nonstop from all the media outlets? Oh, they're all going out of business. The internet boom of journalism is over. All these, internet news agencies are all going out of business. Mainstream news is losing ratings more and more every day because no one gets their news from them anymore. So their business model was failing. And then Trump comes along and he says, "Yeah, fake news, you suck." And he triggers all the journalists. So all the journalists are attacking him and they say, "Oh, wait a minute. When we attack Trump, we get fuck million ratings." And so that became their new business model. So I think it's more cynical. I think it's more motivated by money than ideology or anything like that.
There's some ideology going into it, definitely.
There is now, but it's like once people it feels to me that once people get into a situation, once people put themselves in a situation, they try to justify it after the fact. So it's like no one wants to say, "Oh, I'm doing this for the money." So they're going to say, "Oh no, I'm doing this because Donald Trump is evil. Oh, I'm doing this because conservatives are a threat to the country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera."
Mm-hmm. So you think they're attacking Fox News' propaganda because over money, because it's
Well,
like a
start off
ratings
as
thing?
money. I'm saying I think it started off as money, and it's slowly people can't accept that as a motivation, so they slowly trick themselves into thinking the lie that they're telling, that Fox News actually is a danger to America.
I disagree. I think there's no way they're going to attract the Fox News audience. Like, one of the reasons why Fox News is the biggest player in the space is because the left-wing channels are diluting their audience over multiple channels, and Fox News is concentrating it.
Well, of course,
Like,
I don't think they're going to steal Fox News' audience. There's no chance in hell they're going to do that.
right. Yeah, they're just trying to discredit them, but not for monetary gains, obviously not.
No, I'm just saying the idea of the news becoming as polarized as it is was for monetary gain.
Mm-hmm.
Is in order to stay relevant in today's culture and in today's, everyone's competing for news and media eyeballs now that we have social media blaring at people 24/7 on their phones.
Right.
And so people aren't super interested anymore in just like turning on the news and saying what's happening in the world, because if they want to know what's happening in the world, they just turn on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and they see carefully cultivated information that's purposely directed towards them. That's more interesting, because when you used to turn on the news, the news just plays whatever. They don't have the ability to direct specific stories at individual people.
Mm-hmm.
And so in order to compete with that, they say, oh, well, now we have to change our business model to be one of outrage.
Yeah. This is a difficult spot for you and I as super capitalists. Because it's like the media is the one place where I can say, okay, well, you've kind of got an argument against capitalism in an information space. And
Yes.
I equate it. I think it comes down to the fact that it's very difficult to serve two masters, and in a space where money is the master you're not serving the truth master, because it's so much easier to serve the money master.
Right, of course.
If you just take the truth master and throw it out the window. But ultimately, news media is supposed to be, they're supposed to be serving the truth master. Are they not?
They're supposed to be, but they're, obviously they've fallen very short of that. I do think that there is some hope on the horizon, because the many of us, especially the younger among us, since we've grown up in this environment, people are getting, I think, more and more sick or distrustful of the media, and they're looking to more and more people to give more balanced or nuanced or objective opinions and stories about what's going on in the world today.
Yeah. Yes. Serving.
And so
an
I do
audience.
think with time that this sort of outrage peddling it'll reach a saturation point. People can only take it so much. They can only take the anger and the outrage so much before they just turn it off and say, I can't deal with this anymore. And we might be, that might happen now with Biden, because so much of the last 4 years was fueled by Trump's existence. So it's hard to predict what the world will look like without Trump every day, blaring in someone's feed. I mean, there are so many people I know on the left who every day when I would talk to them, the first thing they'd be like, oh, Sitch, did you see what Trump said today? And it's like, that was like so much of their life and their conversations were built around being mad at Donald Trump. So I'm very curious as to what's going to happen when you remove that. Will people chill out, or will they just latch on to something else?
Yeah, conservatives are going to be mad at Biden. Biden's doing a bunch of shit that's triggering the hell out of
course.
conservatives.
Of course. One of the things that Scott Adams said that is very accurate is that whichever party is
Scott who?
that's not in power. Scott Adams, your favorite artist.
Scott, what? You still listen to
party-
that guy? I thought we had an agreement.
Whichever party is not in power is the party that becomes crazy.
That's
their
true.
media becomes crazy, and
That's
I
true.
think that's definitely true. So
Invited on to this hour, for example, at PBS, or I would be invited onto NPR.
Yeah, I threw the Tim Pool hat on Eric Weinstein for a little bit there. Whenever someone talks about America is breaking down, we're on the precipice of destruction, Gotta pull the Pool beanie out. It feels
when
so
Eric
appropriate.
says it, he's smart and wise. So when Tim says it, he's just inciting and stupid. You have to understand when different people say the same thing, it's different. Okay.
He says in this podcast that he bought his first home in his 50s. Like, dude's got money. I don't like that. Doesn't seem wise to me. Whatever. Whatever.
Or I would be at his supply.
Maybe, I mean, a little aspy, maybe.
How dare you?
Well, that's like a superpower, but I don't know
That's
if it
true.
equates to wisdom.
Information to the New York Times, Washington Post. That all changed maybe around 8 years ago. And the reason for that is that what they've done is to make a there's a little bit of feedback again. The problem that we're facing is that they've figured out that if they will all plug their ears and just say la 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 and pretend that their critics don't exist on the left-hand side of the aisle, that long-form podcasting doesn't exist, if they can pretend that everyone who disagrees with them is alt-right, far-right, neo-Nazi, et cetera, then they can avoid the deep criticism that the people on the left and progressives would be leveling at the terrible change in the business model of the Democratic Party, its affiliated media, and educational institutions. And so every time I go on a conservative program, as I did with Ted Cruz, as I have with Greg Gutfeld, Tucker Carlson has invited me on, I've declined. The key problem is that they're counting on the idea that they can say, Eric only appears on right-wing media, ergo Eric is right-wing, QED, we don't have to listen to him.
But you're not right-wing.
Far from it. I've never voted Republican. But my point is that it's an active program to make sure that anyone who's invited by only right-wing media and accepts only right-of-center media, that person can be portrayed as if they were conservative. But so every time I appear on conservative affiliated media, because NPR, MSNBC, CNN would never dare have me on because I'm a critic from their side of the aisle, they have the increased ability to pretend that I am conservative because they can say, well, you only appeared, let's say, if I did it on Tucker Carlson, Fox, Breitbart, Daily Caller, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why, at some level, it's not personal to you. It's that I understand their strategy for trying to make sure that they never have to listen to anything I have to say. And right now, it's worth spending.
I did the same thing. I mean,
Do you think that's the only reason? I feel like
Why he blew off Glenn Beck? You think it's an IQ thing? He's like, Glenn Beck.
no.
Come on.
Not even what I was thinking.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself.
Actually relates to super chat. Roland Rush for $4.99 says, when I watched this, I felt Glenn really lowered the level of the conversation. I like Eric's "we don't have time for this" response to Glenn. So look, there are points in this conversation where Glenn is lost, or he is thinking in levels that are too low for the conversation. Maybe that's not what I meant. I do think Eric is hesitant. He said he thinks Fox is right-wing propaganda. He said, if I'm going to go on Greg Gutfeld's show, I'm going to say that. And if he thinks Fox is like that, then he obviously believes that Glenn Beck is like fucking right-wing propaganda too, because he's even more far out than General Fox News is.